Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Aleph, and we will be learning today, Emir Hashem. Hopefully, we'll complete Daf Kuf Daled Amid Beis, and let's see what we get to on Kuf Hey Amid Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Kriya Shema. We pick up today on Kuf Daled Amid Beis, Siman Ayin Sif Hey, 2 lines down in the Shulchan Aruch, says the Mechaber. Now, by way of Hakdama to Sif Hey, we know that when it comes to many mitzvahs aseh, the Chazal were misakin that when we get close to the time when we get the chiyuv to do the mitzvah, there are certain activities that we're not allowed to get involved in, lest we get distracted, pulled away, and fail to be mekayim the mitzvah. So, for example, when the Zman for Tfilas Mincha starts, a half an hour before the Zman of Tfilas Mincha, there are certain activities we're not supposed to engage in until we daven Mincha. Unless we have a mini kavua that we daven Mincha in, then we're not concerned. When it becomes the Zman for Daled Minim, there are activities that we're not supposed to engage ourselves in, even a half an hour before the Zman, because we're afraid we might get distracted, carried away, and we may fail to be Mekayim the mitzvah. The question of Kriya Shema and davening Shachris is unique. There's a machlokes, the Rambam and the Ravid, famous machlokes, the Rambam and the Ravid, whether or not Chazal were misakin that we can't get involved in these types of activities already a half an hour before the Zman, let's say, of Zman Kriya Shema, or not. Why? Because generally speaking, look, the Zman for Haschalas Zman Kriya Shema is Amud HaShachar, dawn. It's not very typical that somebody would be taking a haircut a half an hour before dawn, or that he would be sitting down to eat a Suda a half an hour before dawn, or he's going into a tannery to get involved in tanning hides a half an hour before dawn. So the Rambam reasons that since it would be very, very loy shriach, it would be very not common for somebody to be getting involved in these kinds of activities so early in the morning, Chazal did not see a need to make such a takana. The Ravid disagrees. The Ravid says, the same way we find this type of takana by other mitzvahs, this takana applies to Kriya Shema Shel Shachris as well. Now, the major difference between the Rambam and the Ravid in what we're going to be discussing now is that according to the Rambam, it turns out that if you do get involved in one of these activities already samuch, close to the Zman of Kriya Shema Shel Shachris, then you are going to be considered somebody who was maschil beheter. You started with a heter. So you sit down to take a haircut a half an hour before Haschalas Zman Kriya Shema. You started your activity beheter, because the Rambam holds the Chazal were not masakin that you're not allowed to start such an activity close to the Zman of Haschalas Zman Kriya Shema. So you started beheter. Since you started beheter, the halacha is that you're not mechuyev to be mafsik. You're not mechuyev to interrupt. However, according to the Ravid, you are maschil be'isr. It's coming close to the Zman, to Tchilas Zman Kriya Shema, Amud HaShachar. You're not allowed to sit down and take a haircut. You started taking a haircut, you have to be mafsik. When it's alois, when Amud HaShachar comes along, now you could already be mekayim the mitzvah of Kriya Shema, you're mechuyev to be mafsik. There's plenty of time. It doesn't matter. You are maschil be'isr. You started a prohibited activity. So now, as soon as the Zman for the mitzvah comes, you're mechuyev to be mafsik and be mekayim the mitzvah. According to the Rambam, you are maschil beheter. So it's true, maybe you shouldn't have done it, but you are maschil beheter. Now, as long as you reasonably have plenty of time to do the mitzvah, you're not mechuyev to be mafsik. You can finish your haircut, and when you finish your haircut, you'll say Kriya Shema then. Okay, against that backdrop, Let's take a look here at the Mechaber's second line down in Kuf Daled and Beis. Siman Ayin Sif Hey. Excuse me. Says the Mechaber, Haya Oisek Ba'achila. If you got involved in a Suda, you got involved in eating. Oi Shahaya Ba'merchatz. Or you went to the Beis HaMerchatz. You went to go take a bath, take a shower. Oi Shahaya Oisek B'tispeiris. Or you went to the barber for a haircut. Oi Shahaya Mahapech Ba'oros. Or you are somebody who's involved in the tanning of hides, and you went into the tannery and you started working on hides. Oy shayu oiskim bedin, or you're a dayan and you sat down to listen to a case. So you got involved in all of these things before the Zman of Kriya Shema started. So you got involved in all of these things before Amud HaShachar. So Haya Oisik, you were busy with one of these things, and now came the Zman that you could say Kriya Shema. Says the Mechaber, Lo HaRambam, according to the Rambam, it turns out that what you did was okay, because you were maschil beheter. You got involved in one of these things before Tchilas Zman Kriya Shema. And there's no Takanas Chazal that says that you're not allowed to. So you were maschil beheter. So Lo HaRambam, according to the Rambam, Goimer, you could finish what you got involved in as long as you look at the clock and you could be Meshayir. You look and you say that reasonably there's plenty of time for you to finish what you're doing. So you're a dayan, you sat down to hear a case. You look and you say, look, this is not a complicated case. This is going to take a half an hour. It's going to take an hour. There's 3 hours left to Zman Kriya Shema. I have plenty of time. I'll be able to say Kriya Shema before Sof Zman Kriya Shema. So according to the Rambam, since you are maskil beheter, and you see that there's enough time for you to finish what you got involved in and still have time to say Kriya Shema, so Lo HaRambam Goimer, you could finish, V'achakach Kere Kriya Shema. And then after you finish, you'll say Kriya Shema. V'im haya misyarei shema yavar Zman Kriya. If you look at your watch and you say, it's a little tight, there should be enough time. I should be able to finish before Sof Zman Kriya Shema, but it is a little tight, and there is a reasonable fear that maybe I'm going to run up against Sof Zman Kriya Shema. So v'im haya misyarei shema yavar Zman Kriya Shema upasak v'kara. So you interrupt what you're doing and you say Kriya Shema. Harei ze meshubach. It's a wonderful thing. So again, you got involved in one of these activities. The activities that the Mechaber delineates over here. Achila, Beis HaMerchatz, Tispeiris, Mahapich Ba'oros, Oiskim Bedin. These are all the kinds of activities that Chazal normally say you're not allowed to get involved in once you're getting close to the Zman for a mitzvah. So once it's within, a half an hour of when you could daven mincha, you're not allowed to get involved in one of these types of things because we're afraid you're going to get carried away and you're gonna fail to be mekayim the mitzvah. But the Rambam holds that takana was never made when it comes to shachris and when it comes to Kriya Shema shachris. So therefore, even though we're dealing with a mitzvah saseh daraisa Kriya Shema, still in all, you started beheter. You look at your watch and you say, there's plenty of time. I'm not going to have a problem being mekayim the mitzvah before Sof Zman Kriya Shema. So according to the Rambam, you're not mechuyev to interrupt what you already started. And when you finish, you'll go ahead and you'll be mekayim the mitzvah. Says the Mechaber, if you look at your watch and you're a little worried, maybe I'm going to come up, if you know that you're not going to have enough time, then you're mechuyev to be mafsik. But it's not that you know you don't have enough time. You look at your watch and you say, am I 100% sure that I'm going to have time? I don't know, I'm worried. So you want to be mafsik and you want to say Kriya Shema? Says the Mechaber, according to the Rambam, Harei ze meshubach. Continues the Mechaber, Ola HaRavid, but according to the Ravid, who holds that this person was maschil be'isser, because the Ravid holds the Chazal were misakin that you're not allowed to get involved in one of these kinds of activities already close to Tchilas Zman Kriya Shema. Then, since you are maschil be'isser, and since we're talking about a mitzvah daraisa of Kriya Shema, mafsik, even though you think you have plenty of time, you're sure you have plenty of time, doesn't matter. You're talking about a mitzvah, say, daraisa, and you started the activity that you started be'isser, you weren't allowed to, so mafsik, you have to interrupt what you're doing, the kairei, and you have to say Kriya Shema. Afal pisha yeshois likrois, even though there's plenty of time. Now, the Mechaber doesn't say it over here, but the Mishnah Berurah will. Generally speaking, the Mechaber paskins like the Rambam. Okay, let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Ois katan hey, oisik ba'achila. Uman nikra haschala, we're talking over here about where you started one of these specified activities. What constitutes starting? What does it mean that you started? So, the Mishnah Berurah says, you can see this in Siman Reish Lamed Beis Sif Beis. So when it comes to a haircut, starting means that you sat down and you put on the cape. You put on the cape, that's called starting. Tanning hides, you put on the apron. That's considered starting. Yoshev Bedin, you sat down and you were misatef. They used to wear talis. So that's called, you started the din. Beis HaMerchatz, you took off your outer garment. You took off your shirt in anticipation of going into the merchatz. That's called, you started the merchatz. Achila, I'm not remembering 100%. Okay, weiter. Eiskal Chav Beis. Goimer, according to the Rambam, we said, you could finish the activity that you started, va'achakach koirei, and then afterwards you'll say Kriya Shema. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Hainu kishuhu mishar sheyishar lo zman likros. Of course, this means that you looked at the clock, and you are mishayir, you reason that you have plenty of time to say Kriya Shema, and that you're not in danger of missing Zman Kriya Shema. Umashekasavim hayom misyarei. And this that the Mechaber says afterwards, that if you're afraid that you might not make the Zman, and you're mafsik tavi alav bracha, or what he said, Arezeh Meshubach, what does that mean? You reckoned that you have enough time, but you're worried maybe I'm not 100% right. So then, if you interrupt, so Arezeh Meshubach. Gimel ulaharayvid mafsik. Says the Mishnah Berurah, it's the conclusion of most achronim and almost all of them, says the Chavetz Chaim. That when we're dealing with a mitzvah da'araisa like the mitzvah of Kriya Shema, behischil beheter oy be'isser. The question boils down to the question of whether or not you're mechuyev to be mafsik in an activity in order to be mekayim the mitzvah. What that question boils down to is, when you're dealing with a mitzvah daraisa, the question boils down to, when you started the activity that you started, did you start beheter or did you start be'isser? V'imkein, lefi zeh, b'malacha ay b'chal elu ha'anyanim levad me'achila. So when it comes to the specified activities that the Mechaber gives us, im hiskil kaidem amud hashachar, if you started one of these activities before dawn, ein tzarich lifsaik, you don't have to be mafsik, im yishar lo yishas achar, if you're going to have time afterwards, sheyigmar, after you finish, likreis Kriya Shema ula hispalel, to say Kriya Shema and to daven Shemona Esrei. Darei kaimen lo l'kaban b'siman pei tesiv zayin, because later on in Siman pei tesiv zayin, we will see that we paskin like the Rambam, the loy gozru samach l'shachris. The Rambam holds that no such takana was made, that you're not allowed to get involved in one of these activities before Shachris. V'im kein, hischil beheter. So in that case, as long as you started before Amud HaShachar, which is the beginning of Zman Kriya Shema, as long as if you started after Amud HaShachar, so then even according to the Rambam, you were maschil be'isser. Once Zman Kriya Shema already arrived, you're not allowed to start with one of these activities. The shaila is before the Zman arrived. It's before dawn. So I can't be mekayim the mitzvah of Kriya Shema now, even if I wanted to. It's before Amar HaShachar. Over there, the Rambam says if you start one of these activities, that's Maschil Beheter, because the Chazal will never misakid that you're not allowed to start at that time. But if you started this activity after Alois, the Hiskel Be'isser, in which case, even according to the Rambam, that's called you a Maschil Be'isser, then basically Kriya Shema do Daraisa. Then the Rambam would agree that you have to interrupt the activity that you started because you're dealing with a mitzvah Daraisa, and you started after the Zman, you are Maschil Be'isser. Avaloy lebrachas v'loy letfila. But even in that case, you wouldn't have to be mafsik for birchas Kriya Shema or for Shemona Esrei, because those are D'Rabbanans. And for a D'Rabbanan, as long as you have enough time, you're not mechuyev to be mafsik, even if you are Maschil Be'isser. V'achakach kishegoymer hamalacha, when you finish the work that you're doing, kayrei Kriya Shema ima bracha yisem espal. When you finish, you'll go daven. But of course, says the Mishnah Berurah, v'dafka she'adayin yishar lo shos. But again, this is only if there's plenty of time for you to be mekayim the mitzvah. Avalim roya she'azman over. But if you see that you're coming up against Seif Zman Kriya Shema, tzarich lahafsik miyad. Then of course you have to interrupt the activity that you're doing right away, and you have to say Kriya Shema. V'chol makayim she'enoi paisek. Whenever the halacha is that you're not mechuyev to interrupt the activity that you're doing, afilu yavar zman tefila b'tzibur einei chayev lahafsik. If you're not mechuyev to interrupt the activity that you started, so again, you sat down to be Yoshev Bedin before Amar HaShachar. So now we're saying you're not mechuyev to be mafsik. Now the minyan in town is 7:30. It's 7:25, and you see that you're still Yoshev Bedin. Seif Zman Kriya Shema is 9:45. So I still have plenty of time. Do I have to be mafsik in my din Torah now in order to get tefillah b'tzibur to daven with the minyan? There's no later minyan in town. Says the Chavetz Chaim, no. Eino chayav lafsik. Well, inyan achila, when it comes to eating, mashmim in a mechaber b'simin pei tesif hey, it's implied by the mechaber in pei tesif hey, tisfir leil ikar adin, the me'achila tzarech lifsai tekef b'shalom al-shachar, afilu im hiskel beheter. That an exception over here is eating. If you started eating even before Alois, you're mechuyev to be mafsik in your eating as soon as Alois comes, and you can be mekayim in the mitzvah of Kriya Shema. V'loy mahani shum eitza kol zman shelo yispal, as long as you didn't daven, because you can't be over on lo yiseichel al adam. Ois kan chaf dalid, he said according to the Ravid, mafsik v'koirei. According to the Ravid holds that if you started even before Alois, that's called Maschil Be'isser. Because according to the Ravid, Chazal wa Mesakin, you're not allowed to get involved in one of these activities, samuch to the Zman, close to the Zman. So even if it's a half an hour before Alois, you got involved in one of these activities, that's called Maschil Be'isser. If you're Maschil Be'isser, we're talking about a mitzvah, say Daraisa, you're mechuyev to be mafsik. So the Mechaber said, according to the Ravid, mafsik v'koirei. You have to interrupt your activity, you have to say Kriya Shema. Says the Chavetz Chaim mashma, the implication from the Mechaber's words are, Dala'achar sheyikra Kriya Shema, once you do say Kriya Shema, av shelo yispal ladayin, even though you didn't daven Shemona Esrei yet, mutter ligmar kalelu ha'inyanim shehiskel. Right? According to the Ravid, you have to interrupt your activity in order to say Kriya Shema. But mafsik v'koirei. Doesn't say mafsik v'koirei v'hispalil. Mafsik v'koirei, say Kriya Shema, that's the mitzvah daraisa, and then you could go back to being Yoshev Bedin. You don't have to be mafsik for anything else. Well, Gemoshe Kasavdu b'sif kad dakaidim. V'hai lishta lav dafka le'inyanim ha'ya oisik ba'achila. However, the Mishnah Berurah says this is not true. Again, it's not true if you got involved in a suda. The ba'achila kvar kasavdu d'sar kanke le'hispal mikaidim. Because to continue eating, you have to daven first because of the isser of lo yiseichel al adam. V'nokte mishum shardvar. Inami mishum Kriya Shema shel arvis takte. T'behushar kamke kalelu hadinim. And by eating before Ma'ariv, you don't have an isser of lo yiseichel al adam. Ubishal arvis vada im hischel b'kalelu hachamish dvarim. If you got involved in one of these 5 activities before Ma'ariv, b'soich achatzi shosha kodim tzeisak echavim, mafsik biyad. By Ma'ariv, if you got involved in one of these activities a half an hour before Tzesek Echavim is the Tchilas Man Kriyash Shalarvis. If you got involved in one of these 5 enumerated activities a half an hour before Tzes, over there the Rambam and the Ravid both agree that Chazal wa Masakin that's Maschil Be'isr. The whole Machlokes Rambam and Ravid is only in the morning. So Mafsik Miyad. And when it comes to Zman Tzesek Echavim, Yikra Kriyash Shema b'lo b'chosea, say Kriyash Shema without Berchas Kriyasha, v'achakach Klemer Achilasa Yashar Dovar, v'achakach Kriyash Shema b'chosea b'spal. Okay, look up on the Siman Reish Lamed Beis Ayin Shamar Pri Megad. The Mechaber said that according to the Ravid, you have to interrupt your activity and you have to say Kriyash Shema, af al pishe yeshois likrois, even though l'chayre there's plenty of time for you to say Kriyash Shema. This is a gzera because we're afraid you might get carried away. The Yavaz man Kriyishma. And this is not similar to Mincha. The Karvel of Siman Reish Lamed Beis Hischa b'Chalelu Kaidem Sheispal Einoit Tzarich Lifsik. By Mincha you're talking not mechuyev to be mafsik. Levisha Kriyishma Himenat Teirech Mir B'Yoser because Kriyishma is a mitzvah d'oraisa. This cut Chavav Siman Reish Lamed Hey. It's in the Loimar. It's in Siman Reish Lamed Hey that we go to the background of this whole Shiloh and the difference between Maschil Be'isr and Maschil Be'heter. I'm going to stop over here, and Mitzvah Shem tomorrow we'll begin with Siman Ayin Aleph and Daf Kuf Hey Amid Aleph. Hopefully, shortly I'll be able to get back to saying a full-length 45-minute shir. Thank you for bearing with me. In the schus of Liman HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshua's Refuah's Parnasim Shidduchim to all those in need, and we should be zeicher to see the Bias Tzedek from Herav Yameinu Amen. Be well.